Welcome to the Full Moon Film Buff, episode 109, and episode B3 of the Full Moon Book Buff. We're going to talk about Bad Moon from 1996 and the source novel Thor by Wayne Smith from 1992. As a result, this will probably be a longer than normal episode. I watched the film on Roku. I read the book on Kindle. I had not seen this or read this before, and what an absolute treat this was. We begin with the prominent crew and cast. You can find links to a complete credit list in the show notes. This film was directed by Eric Red. It was written by Eric Red and Wayne Smith. The special effects were provided by Steve Johnson's VFX Incorporated. Eric Red gained recognition in the 80s for writing the cult classic horror film The Hitcher in 1986, which became particularly influential in the thriller genre. The story for The Hitcher was reportedly inspired by an actual incident in which Eric picked up a creepy hitchhiker while driving cross-country to Texas. He followed that up with the stylish vampire doozy Near Dark. He made his directorial debut with Cohen and Tate in 1989, a crime thriller that he also wrote. In addition to screenplays, Red has written novels and comic books. I hunted but could find no biographical information about Wayne Smith, which is a shame. I would love to learn more about him. I first discussed Steve Johnson when I analyzed Howling 4, the original Nightmare from 1988. The cast includes Mariel Hemingway as Janet, Michael Pear as Uncle Ted, Mason Gamble as Brett, and Primo as Thor. Mariel Hemingway is the granddaughter of renowned author Ernest Hemingway. She earned an Academy Award nomination for Best Supporting Actress at 18 for her role in Woody Allen's Manhattan in 1979. In addition to her acting career, she is an outspoken advocate for mental health awareness, drawing from her family's history of mental illness and suicide. She authored books on health and well-being, including her memoir, Out Came the Sun. She's also been involved in documentary projects, such as Running from Crazy in 2013, which explores her family's struggles with mental health issues. Michael Pear rose to prominence in the 80s. He was discovered working as a chef in New York City. His breakthrough came with the lead role in the film Eddie and the Cruisers in 1983, which, although initially unsuccessful, later gained a cult following. He starred in other notable 80s films, such as Streets of Fire and The Philadelphia Experiment, both in 1984. Pear maintained a steady career, appearing in B-movies and direct-to-video productions, as well as guest roles in popular TV series. In recent years, Pear has often collaborated with director Uwe Boll in films such as Blood Rain in 2005 and Assault on Wall Street in 2013. Pear's career spanned over 4 decades and includes more than 200 film and television credits. Mason Gamble is best known as the mischievous Dennis Mitchell in the 1993 film Dennis the Menace, which launched his acting career at the age of 7. Gamble appeared in several films throughout the 90s. His performance in the 1998 film Rushmore as Dirk Calloway earned critical acclaim. Gamble appeared in popular TV series such as ER and Close to Home. Despite success in Hollywood, Gamble stepped away from acting to pursue his education. He attended UCLA, studying marine biology, reflecting a lifelong interest in marine life and environmental issues. After graduating, Gamble largely retired from acting, making only occasional appearances in film and television. His transition from child star to marine biologist showcases a unique career trajectory in the entertainment industry. And we finally get to our first non-human performer. Primo plays Thor, along with stunt doubles. Primo had a 10-year career in show business. First, I 100% recommend the novel Thor. It's not long. It took me about 4 days to finish. Wayne Smith does a fantastic job putting the reader into the head of a German Shepherd. Thor feels familiar, understandable, and still alien. He's not just a furry human. I don't know how dogs actually think, but this feels right. I also highly recommend Bad Moon. The film got lukewarm reviews when it first came out, and I know it's not perfect, but I loved it, and I unreservedly recommend it. I found a little tidbit that Ted lives in an Airstream trailer because it resembles a silver bullet, which I just think is a cool little Easter egg. So let's move on to the synopsis. A werewolf attacks photojournalist Ted Harrison and his girlfriend, Marjorie, during an expedition in Nepal. The werewolf grabs Marjorie. Ted tries to rescue her, but gets bitten on the shoulder. He kills the werewolf with his shotgun, but not before it absolutely shreds Marjorie. Brett plays with his German Shepherd Thor in the front yard. A Flopsy intentionally provokes Thor and pretends to be bitten to try to scam Brett's mom, Janet, out of cash. But she's a tough lawyer and not easily pushed around. A logging company employee works in the forest at night when a werewolf attacks and kills him. Ted and Janet are siblings. Ted invites Janet and Brett to visit his remote trailer at a nearby lake, where he sought isolation after returning home. While the humans barbecue dinner, Thor explores the woods. Ted lies to Janet, telling her that Marjorie left him. Brett finds a whole science lab poorly hidden in the trailer, complete with books on lycanthropy. In the forest, Thor finds the logger's remains hanging from a tree branch. Thor is nervous around Ted. Janet invites Ted to stay with them. He declines and insists that they leave before sunset. Sometime later, authorities are investigating the remains of several missing hikers and a forest ranger found in the woods near Ted's trailer. Nervously, Ted calls Janet and accepts her offer, lying to her about why. When Ted shows up, Thor again acts hostile. After dark, Thor follows Ted into the woods and finds him transformed into a werewolf and handcuffed to a tree. Janet enters the forest looking for Thor. Aware of the danger, Thor leads her safely back to the house. The next day, Thor isn't interested in playing at all. He intently monitors Ted's trailer. He pisses on it to mark it. Janet sees a news report about the killings near the lake and confronts Ted about not telling her. She urges him to stay longer for his own safety. Brett is watching Werewolf of London on TV. Ted hints that he has personal experience with werewolf and corrects some lore. Werewolves don't need the full moon, any moon will do, and they can be hurt by normal weapons. Ted encourages Janet to pay attention to Thor's sudden behavior changes. He also hints that a wolf killed the people by his lake. She brushes him off. With the sun setting, Ted attempts to leave the trailer to chain himself up again, but Thor is standing guard. After a tense standoff, Ted gets Janet to put Thor in the house and then rushes into the forest. Thor barks and begs until Brett lets him out of the house. He dashes into the woods to find the delay prevented Ted from handcuffing himself to a tree. Thor follows the werewolf's trail back to the house. Thor launches himself at the werewolf and the two beasts fight. Janet wakes up and turns on the deck lights, scaring Ted away. She sees an injured Thor and calls the sheriff to alert him that a dangerous animal might be in the woods. She goes to tell Ted and finds the book on werewolves. She also finds gruesome pictures of Marjorie's body and some of Ted's other victims attached to it. She finds a journal in which Ted details his journey with lycanthropy, his futile hunt for a cure, and his hopes of finding peace with his family. Later that night, the Flopsy returns to kill Thor. Instead, the werewolf kills him. The sheriff informs Janet that the con man was killed by an animal. His mutilated body was found near her property. The sheriff thinks Thor did it. She asks if it could have been a wolf instead. The sheriff dismisses that and advises her to put Thor down. Unable to believe that Thor could be a killer and reevaluating Thor's behavior toward Ted, she confronts her brother. Ted intentionally provokes Thor into attacking him. Janet locks Thor in the laundry room and calls animal control, who takes Thor away. Brett does not take it well. Ted gloats, urinating on Thor's doghouse. He intimidates Brett. Janet confirms that Ted is lying to her about Marjorie. She follows him into the forest and confronts him. Simultaneously, Brett sneaks out and frees Thor from the dog pound. Ted accuses his sister of not heeding his warnings and that she must have known the truth all along. As he transforms into the werewolf, she flees to the house with Ted in hot pursuit. She retrieves a hidden revolver. Thor gets home just as Ted is about to kill Janet. Thor attacks Ted and a brutal battle ensues. Both beasts are bloodied. Ted throws Thor across the room, seemingly killing him. Brett stupidly rushes in and is nearly strangled by Ted. Janet empties the entire pistol into the werewolf, but she runs out of bullets before it dies. Suddenly, Thor throws himself at Ted, knocking both through the window and into the yard. Ted, severely injured, retreats into the woods. Thor tracks him until sunrise. Ted, now a human being, emerges from behind a tree and tells Thor to finish it. Thor kills Ted. After Janet apologizes to Thor for taking him to the pound. Suddenly, Thor as a werewolf growls at her, but it just turns out to be a nightmare. Janet, Brett, and Thor are healing from their ordeal. Now, the source novel and the film adaptation share a basic central premise, but they differ in execution and details. So let's explore some key differences. The novel features a larger family unit. It includes the father Tom and additional kids Teddy and Debbie. The film streamlines this, removing these characters and focusing on a smaller core group. This change simplifies the narrative and concentrates the emotional impact on fewer relationships. Janet's character undergoes a significant shift in the film. She becomes the lawyer in the family instead of her husband. This change adds depth to her character, and it also allows the filmmakers to keep plot elements related to the legal profession while consolidating characters. Interestingly, Thor's role is actually reduced in the film compared to the novel. The book delves deeply into canine psychology, offering extensive insights into Thor's thoughts and motivations. The movie scales this back, likely due to the challenges of translating an internal animal monologue into a visual medium. A crucial plot point revolves around the fate of Uncle Ted's girlfriend, Marjorie. In the novel, everyone knows she died in Tibet. The film introduces a twist. Ted lies about Marjorie's death. This change adds an element of deception and gives Janet a reason to become suspicious of her brother. In the book, Thor is the only one who suspects Ted until it's way too late. The novel features a minor character described as a Flopsy conman. He helps readers understand how Thor views his family and the laws of his human pack. This becomes important later when Thor directly challenges Ted. In the film, the conman is killed by the werewolf. This change likely adds more cinematic action and an extra kill for the horror movie audience. There are some changes to the visual description and representation of the werewolf between the two mediums. We'll discuss this more when we talk about the transformation scene, but it's worth noting the difference here. These modifications are common in book-to-film adaptations. They're often made to better suit the cinematic medium or to appeal to a broader audience. However, these changes create a different experience for those familiar with the original novel. They highlight the unique challenges and creative decisions involved in translating a story from page to screen. Let's start with what I liked about the transformation. The werewolf look is great. It felt incredibly malevolent and threatening, which I wasn't expecting since the few period reviews I glanced at while researching this film were not glowing. Now, I think I would have preferred they stick to the more humanoid look described in the book and hinted at in the film by showing Werewolf of London. Give us a bestial but recognizable Ted. Honestly, the partially transformed Ted taunting his sister was magnificent, and most of the way to what I wanted to see. This doesn't mean the makeup we got was bad, just a different artistic choice, one I think I understand. The werewolf in Nepal would have necessarily had a different look to reflect that it was a different person. On top of that, the film would not have been able to keep Ted's nature ambiguous for as long as they did. But come on. I know I read the book first, so I knew Ted was the werewolf, but the movie shows Ted surviving the attack in Nepal. The audience knows. It's why we're on Thor's side. We know what he senses. Having said that, we have to shift over to what I don't like. The one transformation scene we get is distractingly bad. Now, I give the effects crew credit for trying something ambitious and new. It just didn't work for me. This is an attempt to create something more dynamic using CGI. To this point, CGI had been used to blend from one shot into another. However, in Bad Moon, they blend part of a shot. Ted's head morphs, then his arm. There's movement going on. I get the concept. The technology just wasn't there yet. Moving on to werewolf lore, Bad Moon draws directly from the werewolf mythology in the novel. This, in turn, simplifies traditional werewolf lore, removing elements like the full moon trigger or the vulnerability to silver, and keeping the internal struggle between the human and bestial nature of the protagonist. This feels like an intentional choice. Since the novel is mostly told from Thor's perspective, it helps to stick to a simplified mythology. Thor needs to have access to the tools to injure the werewolf. The reader already has to translate from dog logic to figure out what's happening. By focusing on the basics coming straight out of Wolfman in 1941, it's easier to read between the lines. So now let's explore the family dynamics in Bad Moon against the backdrop of its werewolf story. Both the book and film use supernatural elements to examine complex family relationships. At the heart is a tight-knit family trio: Ted, his sister Janet, and her young son Brett. The film focuses on how Ted's lycanthropy affects this small family. Ted's struggle creates the story's main tension. He wants to protect his sister and nephew, but at the same time, he knows that he's a danger to them. The relationship between Ted and Janet is especially moving. As siblings, they share a deep bond. But Ted's condition forces him to keep his distance, both emotionally and physically. This explores ideas of trust, sacrifice, and the pain of keeping secrets from loved ones. Brett adds another layer to the family dynamic. His innocence and vulnerability raise the stakes of Ted's internal conflict. The uncle-nephew relationship is bittersweet. It reminds us of the normal family life that Ted can never fully have because of his condition. and Janet's caught in the middle. She feels pulled in opposite directions, compelled to nurture both her brother and her son. But Ted's condition makes that impossible. The novel Thor, which inspired the film, presents a larger family. Besides Ted, Janet, and Brett, it includes Father Tom, another brother Teddy, and a sister Debbie. This bigger family allows for a more complex exploration of relationships. It shows how different family members react to such an unusual situation. We get to see multiple perspectives on Ted's condition and on Thor's behavior and how they impact the whole family. Particularly, the way that mother and father interact with Thor is very interesting. Bad Moon uses the werewolf mythos to explore human alienation and the devastating effects of secrets separating us from those we love. Let's examine how the film portrays these themes through its main character. Ted's lycanthropy is a metaphor here for the isolating nature of personal struggles. He's dealing with multiple traumas: the death of his girlfriend, the attack that led to his condition, and the recurring werewolf transformations. These challenges force Ted to physically distance himself from his family, particularly his sister. He fears that he will harm them, creating not just a physical separation, but an emotional chasm. The film skillfully portrays Ted's internal conflict. He tries to maintain normalcy while battling the beast within. The threat of transformation constantly undermines his desire to connect with his family. The tension further isolates him, as he can't share his burden with others. As the story progresses, Ted's alienation just increases. He needs to be close to his family for his own protection, but must keep them at arm's length to hide his condition and protect them from the beast. The film depicts Ted's growing sense of otherness, showing the unbridgeable gap between his human self and his monstrous alter ego. Now, Bad Moon uses its remote wooded setting to reinforce the theme of isolation. The dense forests surrounding Ted's trailer visually represent his solitary struggle. The wilderness becomes both a refuge and a prison, allowing Ted to protect others while cutting him off from human connection. The contrast between Janet and Brett's cozy family home and Ted's Spartan trailer in the woods emphasizes his outsider status. This juxtaposition underscores Ted longing for family and normalcy, which his condition denies him. One of the most tragic aspects of Ted's isolation is that it stems from his desire to protect those he loves. His self-imposed exile is an act of love, yet it deepens his loneliness. The film explores how our efforts to shield others from our personal demons can create barriers to genuine connection. Moreover, Ted denies himself the help that Janet or others could have provided. This adds complexity to the theme of isolation, suggesting that loneliness can arise from our own choices, even when made with good intentions. The isolation in Bad Moon becomes even more apparent when compared to other werewolf stories. For instance, I'm currently watching the TV series She-Wolf of London, in which the protagonist Randy has an ally, Ian, who helps her hunt for a cure and protects her during transformations. This contrast highlights how having support can make a significant difference in facing such a condition. Bad Moon transcends the typical werewolf narrative by using genre tropes to delve into human experiences of isolation and loneliness. Through Ted's journey, the film illustrates how personal struggles, secrets, and the desire to protect loved ones can lead to profound alienation. Ultimately, it reminds us of the importance of human bonds and the devastating effects of isolation, whether that's self-imposed or thrust upon us by outside circumstances. It challenges viewers to consider the masks we wear and the secrets we keep, and how they might be distancing us from those that we hold dear. Finally, I want to talk about dogs versus werewolves. For centuries, dogs and werewolves have captivated storytellers. They often appear in books and movies as contrasting figures. Let's explore how these canine cousins are portrayed in various media, including this one, and what their roles say about our culture. Dogs in stories are usually the good guys. They're loyal, protective, and loving. Think about Lassie, always there to save the day, or Scooby-Doo, solving mysteries with his human pals. These furry heroes show us bravery, smarts, and friendship. In movies, we see this all the time. How about Doug from Pixar's Up? His eager, "I have just met you and I love you," captures the essence of canine devotion. Even when dogs turn bad, it's shocking because it's so unexpected. Take Cujo, for example. Stephen King's story is terrifying because it turns a trusted protector into a mortal threat. Now, werewolves are a different story. Since they're the focus of the channel, we've covered them in depth. They're usually more complex, often tragic figures. They show us the struggle between being human and giving in to animal instincts. Classic wolf movies like The Wolfman in 1941 present werewolves as cursed beings. They transform into violent beasts against their will. It's a metaphor for losing control or battling our darker sides. But werewolf stories have changed over time as well. In Teen Wolf, Scott McCall learns to control his wolf side and even use it to help others. In fact, you could even argue that Scott personifies the evolution from the wild wolf into the domesticated dog. In the Twilight Saga, werewolves are protectors of their community. The way that we portray dogs and werewolves says a lot about our culture. Dogs represent the ideal relationship between humans and nature. They're our companions, our helpers, and our friends. Werewolves, on the other hand, often show us our fears. We're afraid of losing control, of the wild part of our nature taking over. But as we've learned more about real wolves, werewolf stories have started to change too. Now they sometimes explore ideas of community and the positive side of embracing our instincts. So while dogs and werewolves are both canines, they play very different roles in our stories, typically. Dogs are symbols of loyalty and friendship. Werewolves represent internal struggle and fear. But these portrayals aren't set in stone, and they're changing over time. Whether it's a loyal Labrador or a tormented lycanthrope, these canine characters continue to fascinate us, reflecting our evolving understanding of nature, humanity, and the animals that we share our world with. If you like lycanthropes, like, share, and subscribe. Contribute your thoughts and additional observations in the comments below. Let me know what I missed or what you noticed. Next, I plan on discussing Lycanthropus, the Moonlight Murders from 1997. Keep your eye on the moon, a silver bullet in the chamber, and we'll see you back next episode.